Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining me with the Power of a Processor podcast. This is Gina Wariebi, owner and operator of Innovative Edge Processing and founder of the Mortgage Processing Revolution. Today, joining me is Robert Land with Priority Processing. Hey, Robert, how you doing?
I'm good. I'm good. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. Thank you for joining me. I'm going to start out with our similar question as we have in the past. What got you into processing?
I joined the mortgage industry right out of college and was on a fast track training program to become an underwriter in under 6 months. And from there, grew throughout the mortgage industry, went into retail, and about 3 years ago, started my contract processing company. And just kind of grew over the years and really grew into a processing role. I had manager roles, team lead roles, training roles. So I've kind of done everything but originate.
Awesome. Awesome. That is great. It's nice when you have a little bit of a different background before processing, just so that way, especially underwriting. So you know a lot of the guidelines and the intricacies that go into it, which I find that makes you a better processor in the end.
100%, definitely.
All right. Awesome. Well, today's episode is all about educating our borrowers, real estate agents, and anyone involved in the mortgage financing process. This is a passion of yours. Why is this a passion? Why do you think this is so important to the process?
I've always enjoyed helping others. I mean, we're in the mortgage industry. We're helping buyers with the largest purchase of their life in most instances. And a lot of them are only going to do maybe one home purchase. So, it's a stressful situation. So educating them on the process, why we do the things that we do, why we need so much information. There's multiple people involved and a lot of hands in the pot, and people don't always understand why. So, educating them and helping them understand why all of this is needed so they kind of can see the process and the end goal, to make them more comfortable. And, hopefully it's a relatable experience and a good experience for them. And, in the end, they can, refer us and our partners and our loan officers, potential future clients that we can help as well.
Awesome. Now, when you say you like to educate the borrower, give me a couple ideas or examples of what you're talking about. I don't necessarily mean the steps of it, but what do you find is the most important thing that you need to discuss with the borrower to make sure that they're aware of?
Yeah, definitely. So a lot of it is, what is an escrow account? They're getting all these documents, they're getting all these disclosures, they're going through this whole process. This is the first time. So, they'll call you, hey, what is the insurance for? Explaining to them, how the insurance works, why we escrow the insurance, why we escrow the property taxes, explaining how that works, that these could possibly go up in the future. So that way they're aware. So when, 12, 18 months down the road, if their payment changes, they have a bare bones understanding of why. Of course, at that time, they can always call a servicer or call back their loan officer or us and ask. But
you mean instead of just freaking out when your payment changes and it goes up, especially why you want to know why. So you prepare them to understand that. Okay, that's nice.
Exactly. So I think that's a huge thing. Payment shock is a real thing. I've seen customers payments have gone up, $500 to $1,000 a month because of an escrow shortage, because taxes went up, because maybe the prior owner had a bunch of exemptions or super low assessment because they've owned the house for 20 years. So just that bare bones understanding of how property taxes work, how insurance works. And then, also you got to remember, a lot of these people have never bought a house. So, they'll ask, what is an appraisal for? Or a home inspection. They don't even understand what some of these things are. So just giving them that understanding, so that way they have that peace of mind. So when they're paying for a $500 or $600 appraisal, they know what they're getting. And explaining that process to them.
How about the entire process? What do you do? Say you get a file on your desk and you speak to the client, the borrower, and you explain, I've sent out your disclosures. Here are the items that we need in order to get your financing moving forward. Do you then go ahead and educate them on the process? So like step 1 is signing the disclosure. Step 2 is we submit it. Step 3 is, do you do any of that?
Correct. Yep. No, we definitely try to make sure they're aware of the next steps. So, signing your application allows us to order your appraisal, and then we can submit to underwriting. And then our underwriting team, who's the person who kind of makes the final decision on their application, they'll issue an approval that's conditionally approved based on them providing, A, B, and C items. Letting them know, hey, we're going to need some more information. Once we submit this, we're not done. We're going to need more information, letting them know that we'll need more information going from there. And then once it's all done, we'll be able to get them to the closing table. And then, of course, in the middle of the process, they're going to receive additional lock disclosures. They're going to receive a closing disclosure, making sure they're signing these items in a timely manner, because, based on all the new regulations in our industry, everything needs to be signed in a certain amount of time, or else it can delay our closing. So making sure they're, checking their emails. And then I always like to try to, when I email them information, shoot them a quick text or a call. Hey, I emailed you this information. Can you please
Yes,
sign this when you get it?
absolutely.
Because, I don't know about you, but I get a lot of emails every single day from spam and everybody
Uh,
else. So, a
I'm finding that
customer
I'm
is
always
not used.
saying, hey, not only check your email in your inbox, but also check your junk and your spam box, because a lot of emails go to that. A lot of disclosures
Exactly.
go to the junk mailbox. So absolutely. Do you educate the borrower on what what a conditional loan approval is? Because I find that a lot of people say, oh, do I have a loan approval? And then I say, yes, you have a conditional loan approval. They don't understand what that is. So do you go over what that means?
Yeah, I basically, essentially give them a brief explanation. Hey, they reviewed your preliminary documents. We're waiting on these items. It's an approval, but it's based on obtaining further information. So here's the items we need. We're working on some third-party documents like your appraisal, like your title work. You're working on getting an insurance quote. We'll make sure that policy's in place at the time of closing. And then here's, 3 or 4 other things that we're going to need from you. And I may need you to sign a few other documents, but letting them know, we're not done until I let you know that we are clear to close. I
Correct.
may need more information from you. And even after the underwriter gives us the final approval, there are sometimes where we have a quality control review. It's,
Absolutely.
manager, I just let them know basically it's managers that are going to go in and review the entire application, make sure nothing was missed. Everyone's human, everyone makes mistakes. So, they might have missed something and we might have to get 1 or 2 more things from you at the very end. Don't be alarmed. Generally speaking, it's something easy and quick. But, until I let you know that you're clear to close and you're going to the closing table and you have your final cash to close figure, we're not done yet.
And I think that's important that when we say QC, I always say it's, to cross your T's and dot your I's, just to make sure that everything is needed in the package so that they don't have to come to you, when it's sold again and, the resale and the servicing side. Um, I definitely think what you said, don't be alarmed. I think that is huge, because if you're going back and forth with the borrower and you're obtaining more conditions and more conditions, then yeah, red flags can potentially come up and they're like, what is going on? Why do they need all of these items? So I agree with you. I think it's definitely important to educate them up front and let them know that this is a possibility. Um, don't be worried about it. It isn't necessarily you, it's necessarily just the process. And just because we come back and ask you for an additional documentation doesn't mean you're not going to get the loan or they're questioning your loan. It's just the process.
Exactly. Exactly. And, I always let them know, I go back to, why we're needing so much information sometimes. The
Yes,
mortgage crash in the 2010s, 2000s, there was a lot of regulations put in place after that. There was a lot of mortgage
absolutely.
fraud that happened. So, sometimes it's like, well, why do you need all this information? Well, there was a lot of fraud that went on. There were people trying to buy homes as not themselves and trying to steal identities. So we go the extra mile to make sure that we're following federal regulations, to make sure that, everything is, above water. And like you said, all your T's are crossed and all your I's are dotted.
Well, yes, and also so, to explain to them that this actually protects you in the long run too, by making sure we have all these documents up front. So again, they don't have to come back to you a year later, or, in 5 years they come back and they say, well, this whole mortgage is fraudulent because of X, Y, and Z. They didn't get this document up front, and you provided this document and we don't believe it's real, or, so in the end, it also helps you and protects you as the consumer as well.
Yes, 100%. So, and I get that question a lot with getting URLs on bank printouts.
Oh,
You know,
yes.
we always need those these days. Customers are like, why do you need this? Well, you could have made that document on a Word document. So I need
Exactly.
something that I can authenticate it by. So having that bank URL or having the bank teller stamp it is kind of what lets us know, hey, this is actually from Wells Fargo. This truly is their Wells Fargo activity. It shows us the information we need. So that's kind of, that final step of, why do we need this information? It's, in the end,
And
like you said, it's to benefit them.
and why we can't accept screenshots. I mean, I get a lot of people who just take a picture on their phone of their account and just send that over, and why we have to explain to them over and over as to why we can't use it, because we don't see your name on this. We don't know whose account this is. We don't have this account number in any statements on file. So how do we know that this belongs to you and not your boyfriend's uncle's brother? I mean,
Exactly.
so to again, back to educating, making sure that they know why we're doing things, why we're asking for things. Especially with large deposits, I find too that I get a lot of kickbacks from borrowers saying, well, why do you need to document all of this? And it just, again, explaining to them and letting them know. And most of the time, once you explain it to them in non-mortgage related terms, they understand, they get it, and they're more helpful getting the documents versus you don't explain anything to them, you just demand it, and you get a lot of pushback on that.
Exactly, exactly. And let like you said, when it comes to large deposits, let them know, if you took a loan out from your credit card, I can't use that. That's in our guidelines that we have to follow based on, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, FHA, whoever it is. We have to be able to source where those funds came from. So you can't take a cash advance on a credit card. This has to be your funds. It has to come from a secured account,
Has to be
gift,
seasoned.
whatever. Exactly. So, explaining that to them and just being like, look, I can use it if it came from your family. I just need them to sign a
To know
letter saying
why.
you don't have to
Yes,
pay it back. So explaining that, look, just because you did this doesn't mean that you can't buy your house now. I just need a little more information. And, like you said, explaining to them, putting them at ease, letting them know why we need it really helps. I mean, understanding, and that's where, going back to educating the borrower is kind of my passion is, letting them know because like you said, if someone's just like, hey, give me this, I need it. Well, why? Well, because I do. Someone's not going to really want to give up their information,
absolutely.
their bank account, their social security card, whatever it may be, because you said you need it. Like, explain to them why.
Yeah, and then you get that fine line between over explaining and not explaining enough, because there's only
Exactly.
so much you can put in an email to explain why you need a certain thing. And that's why the phone calls are very important up front. So that way they feel that you're human on the other side and not just some bot taking their paperwork and their information. They're putting a name and it's to the face that's in your email signature, and they're understanding that you are there for them. I think that is huge as well. Um,
Yes.
do you do any kind of educating with your loan officers and helping them understand our side of the process and why it's important that they do things up front, such as explaining the large deposits and the transferring of cash back and forth, and don't deposit cash right before you're closing? I just find that a lot of LOs do go through a lot of that, but then some of them don't. So it makes our job a little bit harder trying to explain why you shouldn't go out and run up your credit card buying all your new furniture before you move into the house.
Yes, definitely. So I've actually seen a couple loan officers that have had like a 10 commandments in their signature line of
Oh,
like the 10 commandments of don't do these things, buy stuff on credit cards, make large cash deposits, etc. So I definitely think that's beneficial. If the loan officer prefaces that information up front.
mm-hmm.
And as I've spoken to you about it, we do some DSCR lending and so explaining the process. Some customers, whether it be borrowers buying their first home or an investor buying an investment property, they both have a different understanding of the mortgage process. So yeah, these
Absolutely.
investors are very seasoned. They've bought maybe 20, 30, 40, 50 homes, but sometimes they bought it with private money that, they just
Yes.
showed up and got the check and went to closing. Well, DSCR in our world, these are true 30-year fixed mortgages in most cases. So they don't just show up at the closing table. We have to verify some information. So,
Absolutely.
loan officers that are able to explain that to the customers, their investors up front, I think can really help on that side of the process. And then, like you said, for
Absolutely.
first-time home buyer, letting them know things that they can and cannot do. Also once I pre-approve you make an offer on a house, there's going to be your processor involved who's going to be asking you for further information. And you may
Yes.
feel like you provided a lot of information up to today, but you're going to provide even more. And
Yeah.
it's not over. You're still going through this process. You're still going to provide updated information. I need your updated bank statements. I need your pay stubs. Like if we're qualifying you based on you working full time, don't go taking Fridays off at noon and have short paychecks. Make sure you're working full time, so it all depends on the
Absolutely.
situation. And the loan officers have to be as detailed, just as we do.
Absolutely. It's like training a toddler. But why? But why? Because we need this. But why? Yeah, definitely.
Yes.
Okay, now talk to me about fraud. Do you talk to your borrowers about fraud, or do you do it up front and talk to them about that? Do you do it throughout the process, or how do you handle that?
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, and earlier we were talking about, the fraud of 2005, 2006, 2007. There was a lot of
Yes.
regulations put in place, and I probably talked to almost every single customer at some point about that, because almost everyone asks, why do I need this? At some point, someone's going to
Yes.
ask why you need something. So there's regulations and guidelines in place based on past experiences throughout the mortgage industry, a lot of it due to fraud, and that's why a lot of these regulations are in place. So explaining that to them, and then also, I don't really get into trigger leads and credit calls, all of that. That's more of the loan officer.
Yes.
But that being said, there's times when they're like, hey, did you call me? I had a call. And, I let them know. It's not necessarily fraud, but it's trigger leads. It's people trying
Yes.
to get your business. And
Absolutely.
then lastly, for fraud is wire fraud. Wire fraud is super scary. I actually had someone years ago when I was in retail, someone stole an email signature and made an email
Yes.
look exactly like ours, and someone wired like $76,000, and it was in an offshore account within like 30 seconds, and it was
I
gone.
actually had that
Never
happen to
saw it.
me with a client as well.
So
Yeah.
I personally don't send wire instructions anymore for that reason. I
Okay.
give them the contact to the title company. I give them the phone number and email. I tell them, do not wire anything until you call them and you confirm their account number. Like, I want
Absolutely.
go the extra mile. I will not send you wire instructions. The title company will send those, or you can call them for that information. Just because there's no risk or no reason to chance it,
It, it's
so.
it's so risky. It's unbelievable what scams are out there today. Unfortunately, it happened to my client. She was at Starbucks and somebody cloned her phone and took the email address. And it's amazing what people can do.
Yeah.
If they would only take that knowledge for and help for the good instead of the bad, we'd be a very
Exactly.
different world right now. So
We had someone try to steal a broker wire. The title company was trying to send the wire confirmation to the broker, and the title company almost sent it to the fraud person that was
wow.
committing the fraud. So,
So it
it's not
happens
even
to
against
everybody.
exactly. It's not even against the borrowers. It's, we have to do our due diligence too. I mean, I
Absolutely.
every now and then it's, hey, title, here's the wire information for the broker. Please make sure you call and confirm. I always tell them, please call before you wire. So, like you
Absolutely.
said, just making sure everyone is aware that, it's not only against the borrowers, sometimes it's title, sometimes it's the loan officers, the brokers, everybody.
Absolutely. Now, just talk to me really quickly about real estate agents. Do you do any educating with them about the process or how you work, or because we know every broker, every processor works differently. So if you have one real estate agent who has three different houses for sale, three different loans, they have three different processors, we all can be very different. So how do you treat that? How do you educate them up front?
When it comes to like the realtors and real estate brokers, I mean, it depends on the loan officer, to be honest with you.
Yeah,
Some of them don't want us really communicating with the realtors too much.
true.
That's their relationship. So, and that's one thing that I try to educate my processors on. We don't know how many breakfast meetings and lunch meetings and dinners and events that this loan officer went to for how many years to get
Yes,
one deal from that realtor. They have one shot to shine, or that realtor's not going to use them. So, we don't always think about that because we're not out there at these events marketing ourselves constantly to realtors like the loan officers have to do. I
absolutely.
don't envy them for that, for sure. But that being said, in the end, if a realtor calls me, I'm always going to try to take the call and let them know what's going on with the application, but
Yep.
without divulging too much information.
Okay.
I don't know what the borrower wants their realtor to know about their personal finances. They didn't make an application for a
Absolutely.
loan with a realtor, they made it with the lending company. So,
Absolutely.
but I mean, at the same time, the realtor is super important. I want to make sure they're happy and updated and know what's going on and they don't have any false expectations. I'm someone that's very truthful and upfront. And if there's
Yep.
an issue, hey, your customer hasn't responded to me in 10 days. I've called 6 times. I've emailed, the loan officer's been reaching out. Unfortunately, I can't close tomorrow because I don't have all my conditions. They're not answering the phone. They said they were working on it a week ago, but I haven't heard from them. So, I don't mind being honest with them, but at the same time, some loan officers don't want their realtors to hear that. So that's where you kind of have to walk that
Oh,
fine line
wow.
of,
Okay.
they want to be the ones to break that news. So,
Interesting. Okay.
I try to walk the fine line, but I think after you've done a few loans with the loan officer, you kind of understand how they want their business handled and how they want the realtor communications to go. And I think for the most
Absolutely.
part, they're fine with us updating realtors. They'd rather us update it than not answer them. So,
Correct.
just
Because
giving them
then they
updates,
feel
honest
like
updates.
something is wrong when you don't answer
Exactly,
them or don't reply. Absolutely. And that freaks them out.
exactly,
And absolutely. Okay.
exactly. So,
I have one last question for you. What would you like to see in the future of processing and on the wholesale side? What would you like to see for us in the industry, say in the next 5 years?
um, I think you and I briefly talked about it previously, but it's just kind of a support. I mean, we have a lot of support on Facebook, on social media with, groups.
With
That's
other
awesome.
processors?
With all the processor groups, yes. But,
Yes.
but having AIM support for separate processing, that everything is geared towards the loan officers. But
Yes.
that being said, processors provide a lot of support for those loan officers in most instances. So having, support for us, I know you started your new venture helping processors get set up in the contract space and the wholesale side. I think
Absolutely.
that's huge because I went through it. I reached out to you when I started my company 3 years ago and got information. How do I start? Where do I go? What am I doing? Because
Absolutely.
it is totally different coming from retail and going into the wholesale channel. So having that support and that guidance of someone to go to, I think is super important, and just having resources available. That way everybody has, like you said, the information and support they need to be able to do their job effectively and efficiently.
Absolutely. And with that, Robert, I'd like to thank you so much for your time and helping me talk about the education of the process for financing. Please don't forget to check us out on YouTube, like and subscribe. Please don't also forget to send me an email at gina@innovativeedgeprocessing.com for any suggestions on topics, or if you'd like to actually join me and be a guest. Thank you so much, guys, and have an amazing day.
Thank you, Gina.
Hey, what's your secret? You got the kind of vibe that leaves me speechless. It could be model multitasking genius. Yeah, you got it all. Hey, what's your story?